Hey guys, it's Bridgette and it is in the garden. It is prime gardening season. I love springtime so much. And I'm gonna give you a little tour of my garden. And before I do that, I actually wanna give a huge thank you to those of you that I have no idea how you did it, but you found my baby registry and I got gifts from some of our viewers, which warms my heart and makes me just so happy that I have a village of people to help me raise this kid. We had our baby shower this past weekend. Desi is his name. And yeah, we're really excited. You can't tell as much, I'm covering up the bump. But again, for those of you who sent me, you know, even just your well wishes are really amazing and heartfelt, and I appreciate them. So let's go on a little tour. So, gonna move underneath the sign there. It is actually a flower wonderland right now. And I want all of our viewers to kind of stop and think about why that is. We've had record rainfall and we've had very cool temperatures for the most part in zone 9 and 10. And that has led to an amazing display of blooms across Southern California and zone 9 and 10 because these plants were able to establish in cool, wet weather for a longer period of time. And the reason why I want you to really take that information in and just really understand it is in other years when your garden has really languished and just has not done a whole lot during the winter time, if you're not using irrigation regularly or we're not getting significant rainfall, that's a big part of the problem. If we don't have moisture in the ground, the soil biology really slows down. If there's no moisture for the little wiggly worms to do their thing, well, then they can't be tunneling and aerating the soil and producing a lot of good bacteria, which then feeds the plants. Everything revolves around moisture. We know that, right? So I just want everyone to see how amazing this garden looks. And my irrigation has been off since about December. So I was watering very infrequently prior to December. And in December, the whole thing just went off because it was cold and it was wet and it hasn't been on yet. So it's a really amazing thing. Now I want to show you my sweet peas. So these are actually the biggest they've ever been. They're actually going to touch fully in the tunnel, which makes me so happy. I'm actually gonna have a sweet pea tunnel. And this is a reflection of the weather that we've had. We've had some really great weather for growing sweet peas. And keep in mind, if you've never had sweet peas that look like this, that's because I plant these in October. So they are a commitment, but oh so worth it. I've been cutting blooms after blooms after blooms, and they really just, I mean, it's just incredible what they're gonna give us, and the amount of seeds they're gonna give us is really gonna be amazing. You can already see some of the seed pods forming over here. So they're starting to wrap up their cycle, but I still have a lot of blooms to enjoy until then. So in contrast, not to call anybody out, Jeff and John, they planted their sweet peas in January, so a lot later, and they've barely gotten any blooms now. Now you might think, why does that matter? Well, it doesn't really matter if you want sweet pea blooms later in the season, but what can happen is we can start warming up. Typically May and going into June is a time that we really start warming up in zone 9 and 10, and it can actually fry the plants before you get the prolific bloom display that you really want. So, you know, your way, my way, nothing's, you know, set in stone, but I would plant them in October if you want the biggest and best blooms possible. Now, another thing about the rain that we've had is I actually have tons of flowers that are from previous year's seed production. So all of these poppies you see here, I did not plant them. These all popped up because we had consistent regular rain. So seeds that were just chilling in the soil had an environment in which they could easily grow and bloom. And now they look fabulous. So check out my prize mango tree that's in full bloom and absolutely looks incredible. But what's interesting is even as many blooms as I have, I still might only get, you know, maybe 5 mangoes. They're very precious. I only share them with 4 friends. But everything looks really good. And another thing to keep a lookout right now is the transition. So we are in transition in the garden, and here's a prime example. This is spinach that we've been eating and eating and eating, and it's starting to go to flower. There's nothing you can do about it. This crop is done. This is going to flower because of the longer days and the warmer temperatures. This is a sign that this needs to come out, and tomatoes need to go in, peppers need to go in, eggplants need to go in. This crop is now done. I'll give you another fine example. If we can go through a little jungle here. Here's some lettuces. This guy's also done. He's got a central stalk that is growing here, which is going to make him pretty bitter. So this is chicken food. The chickens will love it, but this guy is done. And then also over here, we've got radishes. We ate them and ate them and ate them, but they're done now. They're no longer, look at that. They're no longer going to be really edible. They're going to be bitter and pretty fibrous. I'm leaving them in the ground for now because they look so pretty and pollinators love them. So for the time being, until I put my peppers in, which they're not quite ready, I'm just gonna leave these in, but they're really no longer edible, and besides being a pollinator flower, they don't do a whole lot else in the garden. So this is a sign cool season's on its way out, or really out the door, and warm season is here. Okay, so apparently I have this thing where I'm like really averse to calendars and dates and things like that. So I thought it was like May 2022, and it is May in the garden, but apparently it's April 2023, but that's totally my videographer's fault because I have pregnancy brain, so I don't know what day it is, but it is April. We are in April in the garden. I'm sorry, guys, you know, it blurs together at this point. So a lot of what you're seeing now is beautiful blooms, and I'm making space for our warm season crops. There's telltale signs in the garden that we're in transition, and that is our cool season crops are starting to bolt. Another thing I want you guys to be on the lookout for is this. Look at that. Yummy. This is happening because the plants are flowering, they are exuding a sweet nectar, and the aphids are loving it, and we are getting warmer day temperatures. As the temperatures get warmer, aphids reproduce a lot quicker. And you'll notice it almost always on the tips of the plant where it's the most tender and most delicious. I don't care. This is just gonna go to the chickens. They're gonna eat that, so it's not a big deal, but I do wanna pull it out because I don't wanna be growing an aphid farm. I wanna get that out. I'm not gonna spray. I don't really care that they're on this plant, but it is gonna go to the chickens and they're gonna eat it. So that's another sign that we're in transition. So let's actually go into the greenhouse and look at my warm season crops. So we've got tomatoes in here, and we have our prized dwarf tomatoes. For those of you who've never seen them, take one look at them and look at the difference between this guy and this guy. Big difference. Dwarf tomatoes are bred to be very small and to be very compact. That's why they're called dwarfs. We're gonna grow a lot of them out at the farm this year like we did last year. These guys look really amazing. And another thing to note here is that I want you to not make the mistake that I make every year. Every year I get too excited and I plant my tomatoes too soon, and I think I'm getting ahead of the game and I'm being all smart and sly. And every year it really doesn't actually end up being that beneficial. And here's a good example. We've got these tomatoes here. These were planted too early. So I planted them about 4 weeks prior to this round of tomatoes. And look how terrible they look. And that's in part because they need to get out onto the farm. They've been growing in here way too long. They're starting to get a little bit of root bound. And so really, I fretted, I started them early, and I'm not actually gaining a whole lot out of it. So for those of you who are gardening in zone 9 and 10, if you haven't started your tomatoes, you have plenty of time. Don't stress, we have a very long growing window, and you can succession plant tomato seeds well into the middle to the end of summer here in Southern California because our growing season is so long. Now, if you did start your tomatoes in December or in January, which is a little too early, it's not a big deal because you might be doing 6 plants that you can baby. We do 600 plants. So for me, that's not really feasible. Keep in mind, you're giving yourself a little bit of extra work because you do have to pot them up. Prime example, as these guys start to get root bound, these need to go into a bigger pot. And then they need to be babied until it's warm enough temperatures. If I would have planted these out when they were ready to go, it was still much too cold out in the garden and they probably would have struggled, maybe even died. So we've got potatoes in the ground as well with my garlic. Potatoes they actually have a little bit of damage, and this is from our really cold temperatures. I'm not super worried about it. We're still gonna get plenty of potatoes. The beautiful thing about potatoes is they're really set it and forget it. I'm not gonna do much else to this. You can hill them up, you can do a lot of stuff to them, but they are planted so deeply, and I've added more soil on top that I know I'm gonna get tons of potatoes. Now you're gonna harvest these after they flower. So I'm gonna leave these into the ground well until June to continue to produce tubers so that I can get as much out of my potatoes as possible. Same thing with my garlic. Do not harvest your garlic too soon. Everybody looks at their garlic plants and think, oh gee, these look like garlic, I should harvest them. But at this point, you're really only about halfway through the growing cycle, and the papers haven't really formed. You haven't gotten really good flavor profile yet. It is much too early to harvest your garlic. You're gonna wanna wait till almost midsummer to harvest them. If you harvest them now, you're kind of selling yourself short on the real flavor and the complexity of that flavor that will develop throughout the summer months.